Welcome to the Wellness Rebel Show, where you reclaim your health and tap into your body's healing power. I'm your host, Fatima, here to empower you with the knowledge and tools to take charge of your well-being. Whether you want to boost energy, improve mindset, or unlock vitality, this is your go-to source for practical advice and inspiration. It's time to step into your power and live a life of health and freedom. Welcome to the revolution. Welcome back to the Wellness Rebel Show. Today I have Matt Coffman. He's a fellow mineral balancing practitioner and one of the co-founders of Valence I can never say that word. They're awesome supplements. Hey, Matt, how are you?
Yeah, doing well. Valence Nutraceuticals for anyone listening. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but yeah. How you doing?
Good. I'm excited for you to be here. So let's start off with your journey. Like, what health struggles did you have? And then what did you do? And then how you got here finally?
Yeah, I kind of always been into health and used to work out a lot. And it was very like bro science, I would say, just like creatine and protein and, these bodybuilder diets and stuff. And I'd carry around like this pail of like pre-made up meals that were portioned out, and everyone thought I was crazy. And I'd have them at parties sometimes, even when I was like getting drunk and stuff. It was quite a lot. I was like, would party, but still do this crazy diet and go work out every day. So kind of burning the candle at both ends. And I was partying way too hard, doing drugs and things like that. And I wanted to kind of get away from all that. And I'm from Flint, Michigan. So I was like, I'm going to move across the country and just, kind of sober up and get my, I always liked health. I always worked out and took quite a few supplements, multivitamins, random things just from GNC. But I was like, I'm not really going to take my health serious, and was listening to podcasts and different things, and tried the vegan thing at first and vegetarian, which seemed like all the hype. That was around like 2016, 2017. So there was like documentaries and all these, other kind of like propaganda around you just eating plant-based foods. But, that kind of got me into questioning, farming and farming practices and plastic use and different things. So I got a lot of the sustainable ideologies that I still tap into with like regenerative farming and stuff like that through some of the stuff I learned being plant-based. But what I found out is when I kind of got sober and moved away is that really without the drugs and the alcohol and the cannabis, that I just had like severe brain fog, like joint pain everywhere. Like the pain was like down to my bones. Like I felt like I just like wanted to crawl out of my skin. Like I was always like, I used to like drink every day in college and make the dean's list every semester while holding like a serving job. So like I just like was losing my memory, and I was only like, just over 30 years old or right around 30. And so I was just started this journey, and I was just doing different things that I heard on podcast. And then we happened to move from our apartment into this like house. We just knew a guy that had a house, and it was really cheap, and we were like, cool, Tampa's kind of expensive. This guy's giving my wife a good deal because they had worked together at a place, and he kind of trusted her as like a tenant. But what we didn't know is that place had mold. And so within a few months of being there, my health really, like it was like where it was like already not doing well, was trying to tweak it and fix it. And then that was just like the final straw. So I started jumping through the hoops of functional medicine because I had already kind of been listening to like Ben Greenfield podcasts and different like health podcasts, Luke Story and things like that, where I kind of felt like the functional route was the way to go. Even though I did go into Western medicine at a point when I wasn't getting answers, and they really didn't give me any answers, but I did get like an MRI and a CAT scan. I was looking for like brain tumors or cancers because my brain was just like legitimately felt like I was like, maybe there's like a tumor or something. Like there's something like really that needs to be surgically removed. Like that's how bad I felt. I was like in there, like forcing them, give me a scan. And they really didn't want to. They were like, oh, it's kind of rare. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I feel like I'm dying. And so, but then like on the functional side, I had no cancer, I had no tumors from the scans. But on the functional side, it was kind of like similar to Western medicine, like just like shooting in the dark a little bit with a little bit more advanced testing. It seemed like, my first he was a functional MD. So he was like an MD who converted over to functional medicine, and the insurance that I had at the time, he accepted because he was an MD. So that's why I kind of started with him. And he's did like 24-hour, cortisol tests and, some blood tests and some, functional labs, and kind of diagnosed me with like HPA axis dysfunction, which is probably very true, but more so at a deeper level than what he was, giving me supplements for, looking into the heavy metals and stuff that we'll talk about later. But yeah, he adrenal fatigue and HPA axis dysfunction. I tried his stuff was like eating every 3 hours, old school, like stabilizing your blood sugar, and everything was measured out, kind of back to my old roots of bodybuilding. So I was like very strict with that, doing the diet exactly like they said, all these random supplements, and just really didn't get any better, not knowing that I lived in mold. And then I started to kind of wake up to the mold issue after I'd seen a few doctors. I got like my genetics read by somebody, was trying some different supplements for genetics. And then once my wife started to have symptoms, it took like a couple of years. It seemed like she was able to tolerate the mold a lot longer. But then once COVID happened, she was actually in the house a lot more, right? We couldn't really do anything. Yeah. So she kind of got trapped in the house more. And I was already in the house all the time, working from home and doing podcasts and stuff. And so once she started to have more symptoms, I started to go question the actual environment itself, because she had pretty bizarre stuff going on too. Although it was like she was still capable of like running her business and being a personal trainer and all the things, yoga instructor. She started to have like twitches in her arms that she couldn't control, and she was like trying to get them massaged out and weird things like that, and like memory issues and fatigue issues, and obviously breathing and sinus issues from mold. So we literally threw away everything that we owned, like bed, dressers, almost all my clothes. Like I was down to just like a few things that I kept, and I washed them at the laundromat with like really high hot water and like some mold cleaning stuff, and took basically the bare minimum. And we were legitimately sleeping. I don't talk about this that much, but we were sleeping at our friend's house. She had just bought a new house, a 3-bedroom house, and she was going to be living in it by herself. And we were sleeping on 2 separate air mattresses in her house. That's like where we had like nothing. And it was just crazy. I'm like, what is going on here? I'm like in my 30s. I'm in someone's side room. I'm doing coffee enemas in my friend's house. Like it was just bizarre. But I started to feel a tad bit better, but it just wasn't really getting me anywhere. And then I went to see Dr. Minkoff, who is like really prestigious Lyme and cancer doctor who was here. He's only about 35 minutes away from me. So I was kind of lucky to have went over there, and he diagnosed me with, pretty much everything: Lyme, Babesia, Epstein-Barr, mold, like all these things. And, he did a bunch of fancy tests, and it was like a $20,000 treatment where I was doing like multiple different IVs in his clinic a couple times a week, but I would be out there for like 5 hours between the IVs, the PEMF, the HOCAT, which is like an ozone sauna with PEMF in it, vibration plates, and all this different stuff. Meanwhile, he had me on like 3 different peptides, like 40, 50 different supplements, herbs, and different nutrients. And after I did his protocol, he basically was like, congrats, like, you're not testing for Lyme. And I was like, I left there thinking like, but I feel like awful. Like I don't feel really any better. My wife said she thinks I got a little bit better, but I just still felt severe brain fog, fatigue. Like I just really didn't feel like it moved the needle. And then I just started kind of going down this mineral rabbit hole. And it started with like Morley Robbins and, how important magnesium is and copper. And I had been taking magnesium for years. So I kind of knew the importance of that. But then Morley starts talking about copper. And then I get introduced to Jason Hommel's work, which is another kind of crazy protocol where you're doing like high dose copper, high dose zinc, but with a bunch of like selenium and B vitamins with it and vitamin C. And I actually kind of got a little bit better on Jason Hommel's protocol. Like maybe I had like a low sodium potassium ratio or something where that copper and zinc combination was coming into play. I really not sure because I hadn't done any kind of testing. But yeah, I definitely like removed a few parasites, like started to feel better on that program. So I started to really dive into like how important minerals are. And actually in his Facebook group, although I don't really like his just kind of winging it approach, there was a lot of smart people in his, like, he's got like 50,000 people in there now. I think there was only like 7,000 or 8,000 when I joined, but like posting research about like different forms of minerals, like which minerals have the most bioavailability, which B vitamins are the best, and things like that. So we were all kind of in there like learning and reading research as we were doing that protocol. But then it just kind of plateaued. Like, I don't know if maybe my sodium potassium ratio flipped or whatever happened there, but I still felt better than before I started, but it was kind of plateauing. And we kind of know now with mineral balancing is like, you got to do the retest and see what's happened and change the protocol. And then I heard Clark Engelbert, one of my mentors, on Mito Life podcast, and I was like, well, wow, this sounds like the importance of minerals are far more ranging than just copper and magnesium. Like I said in this recent Luke Story podcast I don't really like how Morley has like this hierarchy of minerals where it's like copper is the most important and then magnesium's right there. And then like you should just never almost take anything else, which is pretty crazy. Because once you dig into the weeds of it, it's like zinc is extremely important. Calcium is extremely important. Boron, the list is never ending. On how important these minerals are to run our system. And as I did mineral balancing, it was challenging, obviously, because I was still so sensitive, may have had leftover, chronic infections that were being killed off. I'm not sure. Released. I can't even tell you, I still release parasites to this day. It's quite bizarre how many parasites I removed on this program. And although I was having the detox reactions, I just would feel like I would have less joint pain. Like my memory would come back, and then obviously it would come and go because we're detoxing metals out of the brain. But I could feel, although the detox symptoms were there, like different aches and pains that I would have and different things. My nervous system felt less stressed. I was less reactive as far as like anger goes, because like with the Lyme and the mold and all the toxicity, you kind of be a little short tempered. Sometimes I would really catch myself, I did a lot of meditation and yoga to try to balance that out, because I'm not really an angry person. It was just like I was so toxic that I would snap sometimes with the wife and whatever. And so I just slowly keep getting better and better and better through mineral balancing. And then I just literally went full send, became a practitioner, have helped tons of clients. It's the feedback we get. I'm sure you think the same thing sometimes, like with some of the feedback you get with certain clients that really push through the detox, like what they tell you happened. Like I just had some lady who's like thought she was in menopause like for years, like started having her regular period again. Some kid I just have like grew like 4 inches. He was like a real like runt. Like he really felt like the nutrition was playing a role in like keeping him small. And he did mineral balancing for like 8 months to a year. And now he like grew 3 inches. He's like way more like outgoing and social. So it's pretty bizarre. And then we obviously started Valence, which is kind of like the upgraded supplements that I think are way more effective than what we used to use. And that's kind of my crazy long backstory with my health journey.
How long have you been mineral balancing?
Just over 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm still in the weeds a little bit. I think a lot of people say like between that year 2 and 3, you really like probably catch a stride. And some days I do feel like that. Like I feel like, man, like I'm buzzing, like I'm kind of high. And then like, some days you kind of get hit with a little detox. So but I'm definitely like light years better than what I was 2 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I'm listening to your story. I'm like, man, we kind of had a similar lifestyle. I was like partying a lot, all these things, but I did switch my lifestyle in 2010 because I wanted to get off the antidepressants and the anti-anxiety, but I didn't discover mineral balancing until 2021 from Clark as well. But it was like he made a post about premature gray hair, and I'm like, oh, I have premature gray hair. I should test myself. So that was like the beginnings of my,
yeah,
mineral balancing, right?
Shout out Clark. His depth of knowledge and his ability to communicate the program is definitely captivating. I think he is a great force for the community. I think without him and the way he understands mineral balancing and explains it on different podcasts and things that he's been on and on his Instagram, that the program would be a lot less popular, in my opinion.
Definitely. Yeah. That's what I also thought. Like he just has a way of explaining like things that's so hard to understand, and he just makes it like oh, yeah, there it is. Like makes you have like that light bulb moment. Mm-hmm. But yeah. So let's get on to mineral balancing. Do you work a lot with men, or is it's like a mix?
I would say actually a majority of my clients are women. They seem more up for the challenge and to take their health seriously. And then generally you'll see Well, they'll test their kids a lot too, because everyone cares about their kids. Sometimes people only do their kids and don't want to do a program themselves, which I kind of disagree with, but I'll do it because I like to help the kids. I think that the whole family should do it. And then you kind of see, once the wife starts to feel better or the kid really is getting better, then you kind of see the husbands and boyfriends and stuff come around a little bit later. I don't know why that is or what it is, because it's not really like a feminine style program per se.
Yeah.
I don't like, it's not like some kind of like yoga or tantric. It's not like a spiritual kind of thing where it's like would off put men. It's very kind of like, here's your test, here's your results, here's your emotional patterns, here's where you're stuck. And then just take these supplements. I don't know, maybe it's the coffee enemas they're scared of. I'm not sure, but it does seem like the men come around later. And then some men hit me up, it just really depends. But I would say I have overwhelming amount of females in my practice.
Yeah. I think that I even said this before, like a few years or maybe like a year ago. I'm like, I noticed that men are more apprehensive or like to kind of really dig deep and, like look into their health and really figure out what's going on. I don't know if, like you said, I don't know, like, because even my husband, he's very resistant. I had to force him to give me a sample. But he wouldn't follow the protocol. I'm like, whatever. I'm like, I just want to see what's going on with you and blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think like men are definitely, maybe until they get really sick. Or you were very healthy before though. So
I don't know. Maybe I think I just didn't know because of like, I would just take Adderall or Vicodin and smoke weed all day. Like you didn't really know. Like I've kind of felt like I had a little bit of brain fog here and there, but you're also like smoking weed all day. So you kind of just think, oh, I'm just like, cause I'm high or whatever. So I think I was sick for a few years before I really, really like let go of everything. Cause like when you're doing a lot of partying and stuff like that, when you're kind of like moving slow and you're lacking energy and your brain's not on, you're kind of just like blaming the substances, right? Cause you're in the throes of like partying. And then you give it all up and you go, oh, actually this is like, there's way more going on. Clearly, like I have shit in my brain. And, before I moved into that mold house, I did live in the Flint water crisis for a year and a half, which is super, interesting because I never really blamed the city, although I do think that they legitimately poisoned an entire community. It was very, it was a lot of corruption at the political level to switch that water source, and somehow they missed a chemical that would, go in the water that wouldn't leach the lead pipes. But I never really drank. I never drank the water, but I was showering in it. And there were probably like 9 or 10 people that died. It was called Legionnaires disease from the actual water dispersing in the shower, that steam, and then you inhale it. And then the lead gets into your system that way. And also the water was like not that clean. So they were getting like bacterial stuff going on, but they were calling it Legionnaires disease. And then the more I got into my program, I actually removed a lot of lead. And it could just be completely random because we see lead come out of a lot of people. But it kind of made me think like, wow, that was probably set me over the edge as well with that lead, an acute exposure like that on top of my system already probably not being that healthy from partying. And then moving into mold was just like all the way down.
Did you eliminate lead pretty fast, pretty quickly?
No, honestly, it took quite a while. It took, we didn't have valence at the time either. I've noticed that we're with valence, that CalMag fusion's so strong that lead's coming out a little bit quicker. But it was a lot of aluminum and a little bit of arsenic and nickel, manganese and stuff in the first year. And then it's been like the whole second year was basically lead, arsenic, aluminum, nickel here and there, and some more manganese, but the lead really, and some mercury. So it's kind of been a little bit of everything. And I also don't think that everything comes out in the hair. I try to preach this to everybody. Like you're looking for, some kind of validation on the HTMA test because you feel like crap. So you want to see the metals. But if you're doing the enemas, you're doing saunas, if you've got like better bioflow agents like we created, and now our kidney support is going to come out next week, which I think is going to help a lot. When you're opening up the actual organs of elimination, the body would rather go through the liver, the kidneys, the urine, the feces. Like that's actually where you're trying to get it out of. Like if you have all of the heavy metals come out of your hair that's directly next to your brain, it's not ideal. So we're kind of just getting like a little glance at what is eliminating. But I've seen quite a few heavy metals move around on my hair test, cadmium specifically, not my hair test, on the Oligo scan, which is another mineral metal device that you can use, but you have to kind of be in person. But I have one at the house. And I would never supplement based on that, but it kind of just gives you like another lens of what's moving around. And I've seen fluoride move out and around on there. I've moved a lot of cadmium out on there, and it's never moved in my hair. Mercury's budged in my hair a little bit, but it's moved around quite a bit on the Oligo scan as well. So I don't think we're really seeing everything. So as long as the mineral patterns are kind of moving in a way that I think is proper, then I'm super okay with like not seeing a bunch of heavy metals on the test.
Right. Yeah. I always tell my clients that I'm like, don't get too obsessed with what you're seeing on the graphs, especially with the metals. Like,
yeah,
it's like, let's base it off of how you're feeling and, obviously the movement of the minerals there. So can you share like what retracing reactions you've had? I can never tell on myself.
I've had quite a few. Joint pain's been a lot, and spinal pain. When I had Lyme, one of my biggest issues was no matter, even if I go to like a world-renowned chiropractor, like an upper cervical care lady here. She's literally the head of the national board. Like she runs national upper cervical. Like they're 3 generations in, like the grandfather did it and she did it. The son's there. They're like literally amazing. And I would still just have atrocious back pain. So I was like, this is clearly not because of alignment. This is like deeper, like it's in the bone. Like I could tell that it was like deeper than that. So lots of back pain, and that would come and go. It's gotten a lot better, but sometimes when I'm detoxing, I do feel it kind of flare up still, kind of down by my tailbone. So the physical pain of where I think some of this lead and other metals are actually aluminum and stuff is legitimately coming out of your bones. And some people have actually told me like, hey, I was trying to like get a massage or like rub my shin out, but she's like, I think it's like deeper than the muscle. I'm like, I think it's probably coming out of your bone. So we're moving stuff down at like a deep, deep level sometimes with the metals. I would say brain fog and like low lingering depression, not anything to where it's like suicidal or anything, but just like when you're moving metals out of the brain, you have to expect you're just going to be a little bit like socially withdrawn. You're not going to like feel like you want to go out and hang out with people all the time because you're kind of going through an elimination, and you're going to kind of, in my opinion, like fake it. You're going to have to kind of act like you're uppity, and that's almost like a whole show in itself. And sometimes you'd rather just like lay on the couch and not do anything until your elimination's over. So like kind of a little bit social withdrawn. And I think even though I'm like an outgoing person, I think that was mostly just because I was like low energy through the elimination. I feel like a lot of it was in my brain. Like I'll feel like one of my main issues was pounding right here, which was like why I always thought that like my mercury fillings that I had growing up, and I got those extracted the wrong way. Like the mercury went into my brain, or maybe some of that lead from the shower or something. I'm not sure. But so I would have like that pounding in my brain would be like worse, and then it would go away and feel better. Things like that. Definitely tons of tinnitus. Not excruciating, like going to go to the hospital. Like some people really have crazy bouts of tinnitus on the program, and that can be due to manganese deficiency or manganese excess. Both of them have been shown in studies to cause tinnitus, and everyone's out here like trying to get like these different lasers and different things, when I think it's actually just like a little bit deeper than that. So like, bouts of tinnitus, I wake up in the middle of the night, like ears ringing, sweating during sleep, things like that, just word recall, feeling a little down. And I'm a pretty like type A personality, so there's just like a lot of days where you just like don't feel like getting shit done, which is like kind of makes you depressed as well when you're kind of like a go-getter. But overall, it's been that. I think it's manageable. I get why people go off of the program for sure. Like I totally, when people quit, I don't really hate on them. I'm like, I get it. It's dedication, it's commitment. But for me, like once I started seeing the heavy metals be removed, I kind of was like, I want all of them out. Like, I don't want anything, in my system that's disrupting any kind of like physiology or biochemical stressor. And it's just they're just linked to pretty much everything. Like you can go to AI and just ask like, what minerals are causing, whatever, leaky gut or heavy metals, whichever one. And AI will spit you out something almost every single time. And so for me, like all my food sensitivities have went away. Like I can eat gluten, I can eat dairy, like I can eat all these like vegetables that I was having a hard time digesting. Overall, mostly my brain functions quite a bit better. And so I think it's worth it. I think it is a challenge. If you really get through that first like year or two, you'll probably never give up, but it's a rocky road. You just wake up on a Tuesday and you feel smoked. You're like, I'm done. This practitioner is crazy. I gotta keep going through this.
What are your strategies for like you use on yourself and your clients when they do go through these healing reactions or the retracing? Like, do you have any specific things that you tell them to do to kind of help them, flow through it?
I used to sometimes recommend like NAC or NACET, which I know some people are a hit or miss on in the mineral balancing community. Like Clark's definitely totally against it, but I've always felt better. I think it helps the liver and the kidneys, and even the NACET, which is N-acetylcysteine ethyl ester. It's like a lipophilic version of NAC, can even get into the brain a little bit better. So you gotta be kind of cautious with that one sometimes because it will start to move some stuff around in the brain as well. So I would do things like that. Obviously, I would say 8 times out of 10, at least, if someone's having like such severe reactions, especially at the dose that I kind of low and slow them with in the beginning, that's one of the main things I do is not try to ramp it up super fast in the beginning until they've done a few retests and they're kind of, getting used to the program. But they're almost always never doing coffee enemas. It's like my first response. Like, are you doing the coffee enemas? It's like, oh no, or maybe one every 2 weeks. And it's like, it kind of sucks to say, but you kind of got to create space for them almost every day. Sometimes if you're going through an elimination, you got to just break a little time. I don't know. Someone got to respect your boundaries on it. I have a newborn and my wife still lets me do mine. And so the enemas always help. The saunas always help, or some kind of red light in general. Extra. Although I don't like Renamide that much, I'm glad we have an updated one coming out. I'll maybe bump up some Renamide sometimes just to get that little bit of extra kidney support from that. But I think NAC or NACET does a little bit of a better job at that. That's mostly kind of it. I'll tell them to skip doses, like especially if they're a little bit newer. Like I'll just say like just take the morning and the evening dose and just skip that middle dose, or even just start with 1 dose a day if it's valence and they're really having a hard time. And generally most people can do 1 dose for, say a month or, a month and a half. And then they start adding in the second one at night and they're like, okay, I don't feel that bad. So going low and slow, especially with valence is a biggie. And then just make sure they're doing the enemas and sometimes adding in NAC. But now we have NAC in Cell Restore. So it's actually, I don't have to recommend it on the side.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of leaky gut, let's talk about leaky gut because, obviously a lot of people in the alternative world are always like, do a gut test or maybe an oat test and then do the whole Candida or whatever SIBO protocols and stuff like that. Why do we need to start with minerals?
Well, I think there's a big issue with, obviously if you're eating healthy is like the first starter. There is some science that shows that our shitty, denatured wheat that we use, it's full of glyphosate, is going to cause leaky gut. So you have to basically be a little bit dedicated to your health from just a nutrition standpoint. I like to tell people like, you're not going to out supplement the fast food that you're eating, whatever. You'll get some client intake forms where people are like, I'm eting McDonald's at night. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a tough, at least they're honest, but it's like, I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work. We're gonna have to make some changes. So like you have to be already eating kind of paleo-ish whole foods, something that's, works for your body. But if you're doing that and you're still not eating foods that trigger you and things like that, you have to start looking deeper. And people like to just do probiotics, which I actually am a fan of probiotics. I use Megaspore probiotics. It's a spore-based one that I think is pretty potent and does a good job. But at the deeper level is the fact that through that, I'm sure, I don't know who all you've interviewed so far, but like that ionic mimicry of the heavy metals displacing the minerals, that it does happen at the level of the gut. And one very well being calcium. So if you say have maybe, aluminum or lead or something in the gut lining, that's displacing the calcium. That calcium actually helps that integrity of the gut barrier. And so it basically helps to close the tight junctions so that the food particles don't pass through into the bloodstream and kind of cause that autoimmune response. So when you're just taking some kind of gut program, sometimes it's a Band-Aid and sometimes people feel better, but then I don't think it gets to the root of like the heavy metal being there. They're just kind of changing around the gut flora and doing some things which could be fine, but I think at the deeper like core issue, it's the heavy metals. And calcium just one. Calcium also helps regulate pH, acid, balance, your alkalinity and your acidity in your gut. I mean, it does so many things for the gut. I'm not sure why people aren't taking calcium, but also zinc is very critical. Things like zinc are involved in basically all of your digestive enzymes. So like I feel like everybody's kind of on this wave of like bioptimizers and different digestive enzymes, which I'm totally fine with. We give pancreatic enzymes on the program, and I think they can help, especially in the beginning when you really are trying to get that stomach acid back going. You're trying to get everything back in balance. A little digestive enzyme on the side might actually be beneficial for you. But you want to start to, get that zinc level up as much as possible. And zinc takes, I would say, maybe years to get it back to where it needs to be. So many people don't realize, like, they think they're just eating red meat and they're good and they're eating organs or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think everybody has like a chronic zinc deficiency, and that definitely causes issues with the gut, causes issues with, brain function, immunity. The list is almost never ending with zinc. And so you have to get these minerals back and get these heavy metals out of the way that are actually opening up the tight junctions. And then you basically will start to have a better, the barrier there will actually quit letting all the food particles through, and you'll quit having that autoimmune response. And that's really the core of it. And I think you've probably seen it, is so many people start to be able to have more variety in their diet after they do mineral balancing for a while. It's not overnight, but I used to be able to, like, when I was living in Mold, I could eat like 4 foods. Like I would eat like meat, organs, maybe some raw honey, a couple veg or fruit. Like it was very, very limited because I was reacting to histamines and all these other crazy foods, vegetables and everything. And then now I can eat like sourdough bread and raw dairy and kind of everything. So there's definitely something to the minerals. Science aside, is I just see tons of clients who start to open up and expand what foods they can tolerate the more that they do the mineral balancing program.
Hang on, sorry. I'm going to pause this real quick. My kids.
All right.
I'll be right back. All right. Well, before we keep going, I want to touch on real quick, though, on the leaky gut and the glyphosate. Is it just because everything, even, I know that sometimes even organic wheat or oats can have glyphosate residues, right?
Yeah, it seems to be the case. Like you really want to, like one of the oats that I buy, I don't eat oats that much, but my wife does. Like the 1 Degree, they're like organic and sprouted, and they say like glyphosate free on there. So I don't know if that's because they're just processing the same like plants, maybe, or I really don't know where the cross contamination comes, or maybe they're just sneaking it onto organic stuff. It's like it's a wild west in the farming industry. So I do think like buying local is like really what I've been into the last year and a half. Like I go to this little farmers market on the weekend. They source stuff from farms within like an hour to maybe 2 hours away from Tampa, because I live in the city. And so I just kind of eat seasonal with that, and the raw dairies there, and soy and corn free eggs and chickens and stuff. So I really think that's the way to go. I mean, I know not everybody can do it, but it's a little bit more accessible than people think. You can look up Weston A. Price has like a raw milk finder, and there's another one called like Eat Wild. And I've found places close to quite a few people who thought that they would have like no access to farm foods on there. And so your best bet is to buy local. It's better for your local economy anyways, to give your farmers some money, and also just not being able to, like, there's wax and different stuff on the fruits and stuff in Whole Foods. So it's tough to really say that you're getting something super healthy out of like Sprouts or Whole Foods. I eat some of that stuff from time to time, especially if I'm making a recipe, but overall, I think a lot of that stuff has, waxes and different preservatives and things on it, even if it's organic sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And when, all these produce travels, they lose nutrients anyway. So it's like really great to eat seasonal and locally, like local as much as possible. Now let's get into, like you mentioned earlier, right? Like adrenal fatigue. And then we got into this whole, like, everyone's and their moms are like adrenal cocktails. So let's touch on that, like the electrolyte patterns in our body.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Like I never did the adrenal cocktail thing. I never really thought it was that effective. Although I do take like an electrolyte powder, and I was taking vitamin C, but I never got into like the orange juice and I don't know exactly how the Morley people were doing it. But I did take vitamin C, and I do take like a Relight powder quite frequently, which was kind of like a sugar-free type of adrenal cocktail, you would say. But I don't think it's really like moving the needle. And where he's getting that ideology from is like the adrenals control the ceruloplasmin. So you give them this adrenal cocktail with some other nutrients that the adrenals need as well. I think like tyrosine's one that he likes in whole food C, and basically that'll turn the adrenals on. They'll signal the ceruloplasmin, and that'll shuttle copper out of the liver. When in reality, like looking at the mineral chart as a whole is really how you actually turn the adrenals on. And so I break down the mineral balancing. The electrolyte patterns are kind of easiest to explain to people exactly like what we mean by mineral balancing and why it's different than just like looking at your, say magnesium level and just taking magnesium. So a very common chart, I would say, for people with adrenal fatigue, or a chart that I see, it seems like 90% of the time people are in the same pattern nowadays. It's a slow oxidizer pattern, which is more of like a hypothyroid state, with very high calcium and very high magnesium, and then very low sodium and very low potassium. So that high calcium and magnesium, we actually look at that as like a bio-unavailable forms of calcium and magnesium, or like calcification in the soft tissues. Not that we need to avoid calcium-rich foods or magnesium-rich foods. We actually need to supplement that in a correct supplement that's in the right ratio of calcium and magnesium, so that the body can actually utilize that to be balanced out. So we're actually give people calcium and magnesium, even though their calcium and magnesium is high. So that's very confusing, because we also give vitamin D. But time and time again, if they do a retest or two, generally those levels will fall, and they kind of usually are surprised by that, because it's kind of hard for them to believe you in the beginning. Like, why am I taking calcium and magnesium when my calcium and magnesium's high? But it works if they stick with it. And then the other electrolyte patterns are the sodium and potassium. So you actually need these in the ideal level and the right ratio to one another to keep calcium and magnesium in an ionic solution to be utilized by the body. So the like analogy there is kind of like a water softener system. So like hard water is like calcium and magnesium, and then you add in a sodium potassium solution so that it becomes soft water. Well, there's a similar, kind of biological process going on within the system, where you're trying to raise the sodium potassium levels up and keep them in the right ratio to one another, so that then the calcium and magnesium comes down, because now it's being more utilized by the body. It's more in that ionic form. So these are your electrolytes. But the big issue in some HTMA practitioners who still work this way in replacement theory is like they'll try to give you like Quinton electrolytes or Relight powders and things like that, which I just said, like I take Relight powder, just not actually moving the needle on the sodium and potassium levels. So sodium on a hair test is actually a measurement of aldosterone, which is actually a corticosteroid hormone that's produced by the adrenal glands. So we're actually looking at your adrenal function by this measurement, not specifically like your salt intake. And then potassium is also kind of the same, where we're kind of getting more of a reading of different neurotransmitters and cortisol responses from the potassium, not necessarily like you need to go drink coconut water all day or eat a bunch of like bananas or whatever. And so they get that kind of wrong. We actually use zinc to lower sodium and raise potassium. And then on the flip side, we use, Limcomin or NAK up, which is basically a zinc copper manganese complex, because copper and manganese are actually sodium synergists that will actually raise the sodium level and lower potassium. So depending on your chart, so people actually don't really understand, like the electrolyte patterns are all working together. And those are the main four that we're generally manipulating. It's like people like wonder like, oh, why is the program kind of the same? Like every once in a while, like only one supplement's changing. And it's like, honestly, we're giving other nutrients and stuff on the program, B vitamins, vitamin C, organ, TMG for detox and bioflow and stuff. But at the core center, we're basically always trying to manipulate those main four electrolyte patterns, because the closer we can get those into the right ratios of one another and at the ideal levels, the more balanced the entire system becomes. Then in return, basically you'll start to eliminate different heavy metals and things like that. If you have a low sodium to potassium ratio and you're taking zinc, you're actually going to feel worse. You're going to be more sluggish, more tired. When my clients' sodium potassium ratio flips and they're still on zinc, then I give them NAK up, or vice versa. They were on NAK up and I give them zinc. The effect that it has on them is hard to explain. And anyone who's been through the program understands this. Like, just changing one supplement based on the sodium potassium ratio is like the difference between like how their whole day goes, basically. Because if you keep taking that NAK up, which is very potent, and your sodium potassium ratio keeps going higher and higher and higher, now you're going to have some reactions to that supplement that kind of feel like detox reactions, but you're really kind of just playing it off as part of the program. And so that's why we're always recommending the retesting and looking at the retracing, because even just switching one supplement can make all the difference on a program. And so, it's kind of like the data is great, but then when it's not applied to actual like testing measurements, it's really gets into the weeds, because you can just look at zinc and all the good things that zinc does. And there you can look at all of the things that like zinc and copper does. And maybe you felt really good on, 25 or 50 milligrams of zinc for a while. But what happens after 6 months or a year? In the beginning, you're like, wow, I'm sleeping better. I'm, tasting food better, smelling better. My gut feels better. I have more, morning wood or whatever it is, better, periods or whatever. Because it's very good for, changing things around. But then if you keep taking it with no testing and that sodium potassium ratio flips, now you're going to start to be more sluggish, more tired, maybe more depressed, because you're just going to keep lowering the sodium potassium ratio. And a low sodium potassium ratio is actually awful. Like, generally, I like if my clients are a little bit higher than they are a little bit lower, because a low sodium potassium ratio actually usually indicates a lot of like kidney stress, liver stress, decreased awareness if it's low enough. And overall, they just feel sluggish and more tired, just from having the low sodium potassium ratio. So the problem with that is they're actually not going to blame the zinc because of how good the zinc made them feel in the beginning. They're going to start switching around diets or switching around different things, right? They're like, wow, the zinc made me feel so good for 6 or 8 months that there's no way it's the zinc. Like, the zinc was like the cornerstone of making me feel better. Well, you probably had a high sodium potassium ratio, but now over a long term, it might take a year or two, who knows, depending on your chart or what's going on. But at some point, if you keep lowering it, then you're going to get into more of those issues. And it's simply the same supplement that made you feel good at one point. So you're going to overlook it most likely and start trying to, tweak other things, when in reality, it's the same supplement that made you feel good in the beginning is now making you worse.
Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people probably felt that, like, especially through COVID, how everyone's like, take zinc and what else? A and D and like all these random supplements to help with their immune system or help them, heal themselves from COVID if they got COVID. But yeah, it's like, and then they continually take the zinc forever. Then they're gonna start feeling like crap.
Yep. Same thing with like Morley's approach is, I think a lot of people have low sodium to potassium ratios. So when he gives them, whatever, 2 milligrams of copper, they get that boost, right? They're like, wow, this feels good. And so, but for how long, right? It's going to plateau if you don't start to test and change the supplement. And that's the problem with that. But I would say a lot of people feel good on multivitamins, because I would say 80% of people are in slow oxidation, at least, like maybe more than that. I'm not sure. Like, so many people are in slow oxidation, and a lot of people have low sodium potassium ratios as well. And that's why they do these other programs without the testing, and they almost always plateau and hit a wall, basically.
Yeah. It's definitely good to know, do you recommend every 3 months, or if someone doesn't want to do every 3 months, what's the longest you go between retests?
Yeah, I would say no longer than 4 for sure on valence. It moved, like, you can move a sodium potassium ratio. I'm sure you've seen it with NAK up like one test. Like, people used to be on Limcomin for like a year and maybe it wouldn't budge, and like you'll see it in one test. So with valence, I'm usually trying to be more towards the 3. Now it just depends too. Like, some people are really sensitive and they're only taking like 1 dose a day. So I'm kind of like, okay, you can push it to 4, or they're going a little bit slower with their program. But sometimes when I get that retest back and they went 4, a lot's changed. And so, for how long have you been in this new mineral pattern? And, the last month, the supplements that I was recommending to you are no longer working and you just don't feel well. So for me, I'm like, just try to do the 3. It's worth the money, even if it's the same, and just to make sure, because, you don't want to go around thinking that you're just having detox reactions when in reality, you're just on the complete wrong supplement protocol. So you could be feeling like crap for a month or 2 doing that. And it was really just the supplements.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is going to be a question about what came first. What came first, the chicken or the egg? The mineral depletion or heavy metal toxicity?
I would say probably the heavy metal introduction probably came first. We probably still had pretty good farming practices and stuff around the time of like into the Industrial Revolution. I would think that people back then were still pretty elite. You can look all the way into like the 50s and 60s where it's happening. And we didn't used to know. Like we just had lead and paint. Like people were getting like acute exposures was the problem.
Yeah.
Now we kind of are too with, with chemtrails and, like that Flint water thing. Like there are still some, but I think it's a little bit less. More people are filtering their water or buying water. But like back then we didn't know as much as we do now. And people were just getting like, everyone got mercury fillings. No one got anything different. So that was right in the mouth. Those were being passed down generation to generation. Robert Selig, I always remember this. He says that 1 ion of zinc can deplete, or 1 ion of mercury can deplete 1,000 ions of zinc. So if you think about putting even just a couple mercury fillings in someone's mouth, and that off gases and goes directly into their brain, which is actually pretty invasive because it passes all of the kind of normal detox systems that we would generally, like if you eat fish, you're not going to absorb all of the mercury from the fish. There's selenium in the fish. It also goes through the liver and the kidneys. You'll excrete some and then you'll absorb some. Well, when it's in your mouth, it bypasses everything as it gets off gassed and it goes directly into the brain and starts to cause obviously sleep issues and nervous system distress and starts to really deplete things at a very high level. But also, we would use mercury and I think thermometers, like there was just a lot going on, like everything lead. He's always showing testing on just like old school, like plates and cups and cutlery. And even now today, like some kids products that I don't know, someone was trying to sue him recently. I can't remember the kid product, like because kids were putting the little thing in their mouth vitamin. And it had lead all over the outside. So we're still getting exposed. So I would say probably that came first, started to deplete our actually increase our nutritional demand. And then also just as we introduced like seed oils, we demonized all the foods that you need to detox. That's the issue. Like red meat, for instance, is like critical. People don't want to eat red meat on my program. And I know like Dr. Wilson will say only eat it for like a few times a week. I think that's absolutely crazy. I think that a lot of the B vitamins and different amino acids and stuff that are found in beef or even eggs is actually pretty critical to detoxification. And we actually have an increased need for them. And I've noticed when I try to eat more chicken and other foods that I don't feel as well as when I eat the beef on my detox program. So I definitely think that we need more of that kind of red meat. But we just started farming worse and worse. It all became for profit. And we're hoping to change some things around. I know RFK had his Senate hearing. He got past one more step. So we're going to vote on him. And he's not just, about the pharma companies. He actually is really big into regenerative farming. So maybe we can subsidize regenerative farms instead of subsidizing soybean oil. I would be very happy to pay my taxes if that was the case. But the problem is we don't do that. And we subsidized, all these seed oils and gluten, and people don't realize like that's why it's cheap. If we subsidize regenerative farming, then tallow would be cheap because the farmers would be getting some of our tax dollars from the subsidies. The only reason that soybean oil or canola oil is in every single thing is because we subsidize it with tax dollars. So we pay for the poison. Same thing with all the, the sprays. He's big on, all of the pesticides and stuff like that. Stuff has to go. And a lot of people think that we only have about 60 harvests left, which is actually scary. I'll be long gone in 60 years, maybe. I might be 97, who knows? But for my kids, my grandkids, things like that, we need to turn that around. And anybody who's eaten organic and local and raw dairy and regenerative beef and stuff knows how much better you feel anyways. although it's a little bit too pricey for some. So we need to actually have a whole government overhaul of how we treat farmers, the subsidies we give farmers, and stuff like that. But yeah, it's a perfect storm at this point. Like we have basically no nutrition in our food, like even down to the vegetables. Like there's different studies about like how much calcium even stuff like cabbage used to have. Like you don't think about, like you think about dairy, but like a lot of our vegetables and stuff would used to have more minerals too. And so now we have to eat like 10 times the amount of these fruits and these vegetables to even get what we used to. And so that just set us up for complete failure. And it's sad to say you have to rely on quite a few supplements. I mean, not as many as I was on in my Lyme protocol, which was like 40. But, you're going to have to be on 7 or 8 supplements. You might need to be on a binder depending on how sick you are. And that's really the only way forward. But I do tell people, like, there really is not a price tag on your health. Like I spent like probably $80,000 to $100,000 between devices and doctors, and I would spend like over $1,000 a month on random supplements and Shilajit, and I was trying everything, suppositories and different IVs and ozone machines. Because at the end of the day, I knew that like I couldn't really be who I wanted to be in the world feeling that way. And a lot of people are kind of not where I was, but they're like subclinical, like where they basically don't have all the energy that they could. They don't have all of the emotional regularity that they could, which obviously helps for friendships and relationships and business partnerships in general. And so when you start to be in that kind of even subclinical low energy state, you're not going to basically thrive and live at your full potential, which is basically what I feel like. I'm not here for anything less than that. Like we only got one life to live. Well, I mean, maybe you'll reincarnate into a dove or something, but as this human right now in this body, you only got one shot at it. So I think, going through the weeds with a little bit of detox and making it a priority for a year or two really is just the way forward. And then you will just start to realize how much easier things are, how much better things flow. Like I used to get super stressed when I had a bunch of emails and stuff because I just had brain fog. And now I'm just like crank out 30 emails a day between Valence and my clients. And like, it's crazy. And so you need to, even if you're not going to become a mineral balancing practitioner, I don't care if you're in real estate, like if you have unlimited energy in your system and creativity, which is a big one that I think people really, that'll start to dumb you down in a way where you just don't really feel creative. And so it's like, even if you're a real estate agent, I tell people like, you could be making more social media videos, like doing more like creative stuff around your business, even though you're still selling houses. Like you don't have to start a supplement company or become like a mineral balancing practitioner. Like you will have more creativity, more energy, and more drive and better relationships because like the energy is the backbone to all of that.
Yeah. A lot of people are literally just surviving, and they think that like they're operating at like this level when really we have the capacity to be like up here, right? Like very elevated and enlightened, but we're so stuck in just trying to get through the motions and survive without really realizing that there's something more to their life than what they're feeling.
Yeah. I actually think on an energetic level that heavy metals, due to the toxicity of them, they actually hold negative frequencies, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So I actually think it affects your aura as far as like a kind of a woo-woo concept of like law of attraction or things like that, right? Well, you can meditate all day and do yoga. I used to do yoga 7 days a week. I would meditate for an hour. I was just trying to figure out my addiction problems and really tap in with myself. But you're not going to meditate your way out of mercury in your brain and do yoga and just get that out of there. And so I think that actually when you start to replace those low frequency toxic metals with a more beneficial, maybe mineral, which has probably, I'm assuming, a better frequency, I would imagine, because the body wants to utilize it, you will actually things will come easier to you because your actual aura, your chakras, whatever you want to call it, you're not an enlightened monk by any means, but you definitely have a better capability and a better ability to like manifest things in real life. And maybe that's just due to energy or whatever, but I think there's a deeper connection as far as like these substances are so toxic, these heavy metals, there's really no safe levels that we know of in the side of the body. And so they have to be bringing down your aura. You ever seen a picture, like your aura goes like feet around you? And I feel like that kind of closes in on you. I know I talked about on Luke Story's podcast about a couple times. I felt like I released some kind of like entity or demon on my program, which gets a little woo woo, but that's just kind of what it felt like. I don't really know how to put it into words. It's just kind of what seemed to be happening as I was detoxing. So there's something like spiritual and energetic about this program as well. And there's been multiple people that, you know, are my mentors or that I am cool with, who have like kind of found God through this program, even though they were atheists when they started. And, you know, that was like very not what they were looking for. They were just looking to get better. So it touches on physical, spiritual, and emotional levels just due to the neurochemistry and, you know, the vibration maybe of the frequency of the minerals and metals, where it's hard to kind of extrapolate and put it into words like how much your life can change by getting rid of these metals. A lot of people have personality traits that they thought they were theirs. You know, maybe it's bipolar, maybe it's schizophrenia, maybe it's just anxiety or depression or anger. And a lot of that stuff can clear up. And so that's kind of a daunting task, in my opinion, to think that like how you treated everybody or how way you act your entire life really wasn't you. It was some kind of biochemical stressor that was causing the system to be disrupted. And so, you know, it is a little bit of a daunting task. And I think it takes a little bit of a warrior spirit to go through it, that you really want to be in touch with your emotional state, with your physical state, kind of blend it all together. But I think it's worth it.
I love that you said something about frequency, because when I started doing this, I also kind of did like the MBSR, and my practitioner always tests like what your frequency was before and then after, and mine has just been kind of like improving, you know, the more you like, the more. So I was like, that's very, but I believe a lot in frequency and energy and all that stuff. So, and I started this program with a really low NAK ratio.
Yeah, mine was actually high when I started, but I was on that like high copper thing, so I really don't know like what was going, where it really started before playing around with a bunch of minerals. So I have no idea.
Yeah. So before we end this, I always ask my guests to share like a golden nugget or a mantra that they like, they love, or they share with their clients, for anyone that, like, you know, is on a healing journey or needs like that nudge to start figuring out their health.
So is it something to nudge them in the right direction, or it's actual like a affirmation, like mantra?
Affirmation, mantra, whatever you want to share.
I haven't done affirmations in a while, but I did used to repeat things like, I am a healing organism. I am, you know, smart. I am intelligent. Even when I had like, I will fix my brain. Like I used to write in a journal, like I will fix my brain like 10, 20 times a day, because I just didn't know what was going on. And I just felt like that you kind of have to have some of these, whatever it looks like for you, positive affirmations, because the actual healing journey is a lot more mental than it is just taking supplements. Yeah. And you'll see this with people who really just try to take the supplements and not really give in to the program. They'll kind of say stuck. You know, they keep working in overdrive. They don't do the enemas. They're not really doing the program, and they wonder why they're stuck. It's because it's a lot more. It's giving into rest. It's giving into where your body's at, and it's all a lot about that mental, the thought process of like, you are a healing organism. You just have some interferences in the way that need to be removed. And so if you believe that, then you'll never give up on yourself. And so any kind of mantra that says like, I am a healing organism, I am smart, I am capable. You know, I literally would write, I will heal my brain like all the time, back when I would journal a lot and meditate. And I think that kind of kept me like reinforced some patterns, right? Like where I'm like, okay, you'll get through this somehow, some way.
Yeah. I love that. No, I do notice that a lot of people that seem like they're not moving the needle is because they refuse to change the way they think, or they refuse to rest when they're not listening to their bodies telling them what it really needs, and not deal with the emotional side, or like that emotional stressor or the toxic relationship or workplace or whatever. And then they refuse to like deal with that, and then they get stuck, and then they're like, I'm going to get off the program.
Yeah. You have to really just know that the program's not for everybody. I tell all like new
Yeah.
practitioners, like, listen, people are just going to not hit you up. They're going to jump off the program. You have to keep promoting yourself, keep getting newer clients. And then at some point you'll just start to have people who like the program, and you'll just be getting a lot of retests from them. And then, getting new clients here and there. But it's a little bit of people are like, well, how can I keep them on the program? It's like, you kind of can't. Like it's
Yeah.
it's a commitment and it's a challenge. And if they're not 100% dedicated to it, I try to tell people like what I put out a lot of podcasts and as much as I can, but even when people hit me up, DM or email, I kind of tell them like, it's a dedicated program. It's this or that. Like, I don't just try to take their money, because I feel like it's kind of pointless. Yeah, I get paid either way, but it's just like, I'm not here to just take people's money if they don't really like know what they're getting into. Because when you say mineral balancing, it sounds like some cool thing, like, oh, wow, yeah, I kind of like the sounds of that. And it's like, yeah, but it's actually pretty challenging. So, regular people from like high school or whatever will hit me up. I kind of like break it down, like, listen, this is a full send program. It's not, something that you're just going to like take some supplements and get better.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's like you need to have a separate PSA for what goes on in the program to get them ready and make sure that they're really going to be dedicated, so that they don't feel like they're wasting their money, and then they won't blame you for them not feeling better.
Yeah. That's what I try to do, as many of the podcasts about like as much about the program as I can. So it's like, listen, I have all this free information as much as I can. I talk about nearly everything, and I'm still doing shows about it. So it's like, I can only put so much out there for free. If you give into it and someone told you about it and you don't know what you're getting into, I can't stop you, because you can just go to my website and make an order. But if they just reach out to me, I kind of break it down for them, so it doesn't feel like I'm just like trying to take everybody's money.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we're at the end of the line. Why don't you share with our listeners where they can find you and connect with you?
Yeah. Mostly on Instagram when it comes to social media. Integrative Matt. Pretty simple, all one word. My podcast is Integrative Thoughts. Got a lot of cool podcasts on there that are just not only mineral balancing, but lots of different companies and health stuff on there as well. So you can check that out. And then my website is integrativethoughts.com if you want to HTMA or you want to check out more of my stuff over there.
All right. Thank you, Matt, for joining us today. And for everyone still listening, stay rebellious.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please click the subscribe button, share it with others, post about it in social media, or leave a rating and review. To catch all the latest from me or suggest topics, you can follow me on Instagram at Fatima Pagtakan or at The Wellness Rebel Show. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.